I gave myself a price tag, and this is how much I worth. So if I get a lower grade, during my second master's, I got during my first master, I got an A minus. After I got that A minus, I thought that I don't deserve to be in that school anymore. I don't deserve to be taught by that professor anymore. I'm dead serious. This is what I thought. So I had to. So the professor who gave me an A minus, his office was on second floor. So when I want to go to the other classroom on the second floor, I can't go past his office because I don't want him to see me and see that's the disappointing student, and that's who she got A minus. So I had to go to the third floor and go that way, and then go downstairs to the other side of the hallway. And that is people, and this is for real. This is really for real. I'm not exaggerating. And I know for a fact that a lot of children feel this way.
And I know a lot of people in this audience probably
feel that way
because it's part of the culture, and it hurts to live like that. And a plug for a free way to get help. 12-step programs for adult children. Free, you put $1 in the hat when they pass it around. But 12-step programs have been very helpful for recovering perfectionists, recovering control addicts, recovering relationship addicts, meaning we focus on others more than on ourselves. So if affording counseling is ever an issue, look up some of these 12-step programs for adult children. They're wonderful. Nobody needs to hurt like that.
Oh yes. No, I want to add something about the culture as a whole in America is very grade-oriented. My dad was British civil servant and came over on a project, country project, Canada, America, England and Australia, I think. Anyway, he had to, he was in charge of organising some people and planning the projects and supervising and grading the people. And he was told that, he tried to be helpful with putting puzzle where people needed, and he was told, don't give anybody less than an A unless you think they're worthless, because they'll think they're worthless. And he said they used to give him stacks of paper this high. He said, well, they could have condensed it to this, but they thought the volume impressed. And he said it was just, he laughed, because he said that was just so hard, that all their ideas about themselves. But these were people, scientists and civil servants and people in the military and all over the place. And then he said, we were told, don't give them less than an A if you think that, as I say, unless you think they're worthless, but they'd be.
And I also heard from you, a lot of top kind of rated professionals, they have some kind of tendency. So there's nature versus nurture. Not that everyone who wants to do things perfectly, drive themselves to the next step, is sick, right? Or even they are a little bit sick, and we're all a little bit sick, and they are still performing very well. It didn't, right? So there's a difference.
I think there's a high prevalence of anxiety amongst professional, successful people, because that can be somewhat adaptive. And anxiety disorder is heritable. I mean, so there's, I think they estimate 30–40% heritability for anxiety disorder and depression, and even higher for things like psychotic disorders like schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. So sometimes it's in the genes, and then environment can affect it greatly. We know from genetics, from studying like identical twins, that even if they have identical genes, the way genes are expressed, how they're turned on, can be affected by environment. And so that argues for really finding the most nurturing, open environment, being aware of your children's feelings and encouraging open communication. But sometimes it's not an easy solution. Some kids just have the propensity for anxiety.
So there's one thing I realized that if we compare one child with another, there's always some different, right? Some is coming from nature. I mean, it's in the gene, as she said. Some is like from the environment. Even we're saying, I have 2 siblings, the 2 kids, but the older one is kind of selfish. The second one is like a selflessness, kind of. Sometimes it's really about how we parent them. Sometimes they are born very, very different. I mean, we're all parents. So what do you guys think about it?
One thing to add, and you know, you see when they're siblings, a lot of times their personalities are vastly different, and genes matter, and then their inborn temperament, the way they are, also affect how we parent them. So, you know, a child who's naturally an easygoing child who runs around in love with the world, always smiling, he's going to experience people as generally generous and loving because people are going to be smiling back and laughing, whereas a child who generally is more anxious, they're going to experience people as more distant. And, you know, I actually, my 2 kids have these kind of opposing personality. The older one is more anxious, more guarded. The younger one, he will become your best friend instantly. And so I think about how their temperament affects how I treat them. And I find that a lot of times the way I interact with them is affected by how they are. And so we have to think more about, are you treating them differently? If you want your child to be more open and more loving, how do you not treat them so differently? It's you know, it's hard.
Actually, from there, I remember, Susan, when I talk with you, it's like, how do you measure from grade to a grade? From like one developmental stage, like they are little babies, to they are like 3rd grade, 5th grade, and then to their middle schoolers. So I said, how do you measure a child is good to move up? Right? I know your school have middle class, middle class, and older class by the. So from one stage to another, I like the word you said is that you just look at his or her growth. You want to say something about it?
People frequently say, well, you know, what would this be if they were in a grade school? What would be, are they on level? And my concern is just that they are growing. So, you know, they start at a certain point so they can do certain things, and then you see, if you look, it's what we're saying about watching a child, looking at a child, you see that they have grown. They've grown maybe socially. Well, you can't stop them growing. You can't stop them growing up. You can't stop them growing in their maturity and their learning if you're not putting something in their way that will stop them. So you see the improvement. You don't need to get a grade card that's a report card that says this or that. And anytime I've been asked for that by outside institutions, like they say if all the A students get to go for a day 3 or something at Great Adventure, I write a letter that everyone is an A student because they all deserve to go, you know, to have equal treatment. But I mean, that's a trivial thing. But if you're looking for, I remember when my kids first went to high school, one teacher put a ruler along the grades and said, "Why are you here? She's doing perfectly well." And I said, because I want to know other things. I want to know about. And it was interesting because when I engaged in conversation, one of the teachers was very concerned about her being, she thought, aggressive. She's always twisting her hair and asking questions. And I said, that's because she wants the answers. And she's twisting her hair and looking at you because she's nervous of how you are going to react to her. And based on that information, the teacher, fortunately, eased up a bit on her and listened to her. I said she asks questions because she wants answers. And so the idea of them being at a certain level and doing certain things, I think is you look at them, you don't give them a test to see if they can walk or crawl or say their first words. You hear it and you say, wow, they're doing, look, now they're walking further, or they're doing, and then same with, you're not comparing. Some children get up and walk and never crawl. And some wait until even when they're older, until they've got the whole picture before they say something, and that's their nature. But then you see the changes in them, and that's what you're looking for. Looking for growth, not a measure against some standardized whatever.
I'm not looking for anything, and that's the truth. And the reason I'm not is that many, many years ago, I was a high school English teacher, and then I became a psychotherapist when I got my doctorate. And I started paying much more attention to what we're doing in our culture. I studied the school system as an addictive culture, characteristics being control, perfectionism, enabling, irresponsibility.